Yo, you want to see something cool? No? Well, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Welcome to the rebranded show, formerly known as the Backyard Republic, now Mock and Matchsticks. Tonight we're going to delve into this, the deep state we always hear Trump talk about and everybody talk about, and we don't know how far it actually goes back. What we're going to do, we're going to shed some light on everything, and we're going to talk about a lot of the declassified stuff that we know about. I don't deal in conspiracy theories. I deal in conspiracy facts, and we've had a lot of that lately. A lot of times that people, recent history, the COVID vaccine and the origins of COVID-19, that turned out that to be more fact than theory. We're going to dive into the Patriot Act, the COINTELPRO. It was a blackmail assassinations of Tuskegee experiments, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Epstein, MK Ultra, a whole bit. We're going to get into a lot of it. All right. Hope you enjoy it. So, welcome back. Well, we're going to walk through what Uncle Sam's rap sheet is: FBI blackmail, infiltration, and assassination of MLK, Malcolm X, and Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton, if you don't know who he was the leader of the Black Panthers. And what had happened there is the FBI and the New York Police Department raided his house and assassinated him during the raid. I think that is New York, maybe Chicago, but that's what happened there. And MLK and Malcolm X. What they said was MLK, Martin Luther King. They said he was a communist and he was placed here by the Soviet Union, the USSR at the time, to bring communism to the African American parties of the African American population of the United States, to get them to rise up. Is that true? I don't know. Was it worth assassinating him for? Absolutely not. But look where we're at with the Democratic Party now. There's definitely a lot of socialists involved there. Same thing with Fred Hampton. They said that Fred Hampton was a communist, and this movement, the Black Panthers, was actually a socialist movement, just like the BLM and all that other stuff. You had the Kent State Massacre and Waco, where law enforcement openly killed citizens. Human experiments. They went to Tuskegee, Alabama, got 600 black men, and gave them syphilis, injected them with syphilis, told them that it was a vaccine, and injected them with syphilis, and followed them and did not give them medical treatment for 40 years because they wanted to see what syphilis would do to a human being. That is absolutely horrific, terrible thing to do. They released chlorine gas inside the New York subways on New York citizens. No one knew what was going on there. They kidnapped people and gave them LSD to MK Ultra. Everybody thinks MK Ultra. That's been declassified. The CIA actually did that stuff. And here's the thing: the catch: the CIA is not supposed to operate outside of American soil, right? So what they do is they team up with the NSA, and they come up with all this stuff. And we're going all the way back to the 1930s. That's what's surprising. 1930s to 2025. We're still in this almost 100 years later. That's why Donald Trump has such a hard time exposing the deep state, because those roots run really, really deep. So more recently, let's talk about the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was after 9/11, and what that did is that released the government gave the ability to the government to spy on American citizens with emails, cell phones, just a massive data gathering bill that allowed the federal government to get everybody's information, mine, yours, your mama's, everybody's. They had keywords that they would pick out that they said that they used, but then they have this huge database system out west that has all of our information. And they use the FISA court, which is this secret court that no one knows anything about. We heard about it with Trump some, because that's what they used to get warrants for his for them spying on him. That Operation what was it coming? Is a Rolling Stones song. Anyway, they got that information and took this to FISA court, and FISA was just signed warrants on it, and which allowed the CIA, NSA, and FBI to put wiretaps on our phones without us knowing it. That's no, first of all, that's illegal. Right? Yeah, you have a secret court that we can't go to and say, hey, no, I'm not a spy. All they do is say, hey, we think that Billy's a spy. Well, what makes you think it? Well, he's got a friend that is Muslim. Okay, that's good enough. Pretty much. Or he has a podcast where he's anti-Obama or anti-government. Okay, that's good enough. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. Yeah, a lot of y'all might know about that. The Joint Chiefs, they faked a naval attack to the U.S. citizens to get us involved in Vietnam. They said that the North Vietnamese Navy, which was almost non-existent, sunk an American ship in the Gulf of Tonkin, which got us into the Vietnam War, where we ended up losing 60,000 American lives and millions others, worldwide, because of just lies. The military-industrial complex, so people can make money. I was telling you about the COINTELPRO. That's the FBI blackmailing MLK before they assassinated him, and Fred Hampton. Operation Northwoods. A lot of people don't know about this, but the Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on a. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Bombing on U.S. soil with hijackers of a plane, and they were going to bomb and kill U.S. citizens so we can invade somewhere. It kind of sounds like 9/11, doesn't it? This was the playbook that they've been using for decades now. And what this was, it was to lay the foundation to invade Cuba after Fidel Castro took over and flipped it to communists. They wanted to invade Cuba and get the Batistas back in power and open the casinos back up and have Cuba down there. So as an ally instead, as an enemy, where Russia was putting missiles down there, and JFK wouldn't sign off on it. And that was the beginning of the end for JFK. A short time later, JFK's head split open in Dallas. And then one of the first things that LBJ did, the Bay of Pigs. And they launched it from Zapata Oil with George Bush Sr. involved in all that mess. That we have lost American lives because of greed and this deep state. We talk about Waco and Ruby Ridge. Now, if you're not familiar with Ruby Ridge, there was a guy out in Montana or wherever, and he had cut a shotgun down. I just helped a friend out. But the dude goes and snitches, and the FBI shows up. The FBI shoots his wife and his 15-year-old kid and his dog. Snipers shot him dead. They didn't want this guy living off grid. They didn't want him, doing things that the government don't have control over. So they shot him dead. Shot his kid and his wife dead, and the dog. Yes, for no need. They violated his constitutional rights. They didn't have a warrant. You have guys in ghillie suits and camouflage sneaking up to your cabin out in the middle of the woods, armed to the teeth. It's gonna raise a red flag or two in your head. And this guy's an ex-military Vietnam vet. He's already probably a little antsy, has some PTSD, and you're out here sneaking through the woods in camo. Come on, man. So, and then flash forward, let's go to Waco. You had the Branch Davidians. There was a lot of weird things going on there, yeah, I admit. But they used a tank to set fire to that house that killed women and children. There had to be a better way. Had to be a better way to get that done. You had Japanese internment camps in the 1940s that they put 120,000 U.S. citizen camps because they looked like the enemy. Radiation experiments, bioweapon tests on chemical warfare soldiers because they didn't need the soldiers' consent. Hey, go over here. You're going to do this. We're going to give you this, and we're going to see what it does to you. It's the NSA's mass surveillance, the prison, and the big take handshakes. Uh, George Bush started it. Barack Obama finished it. It was the PRISM. It was called PRISM, and what it was all the social media sites, Google, um, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it. They got all of our information, just gave it to the government, and then when they got caught, they were like, "Oh, we didn't know we weren't supposed to do that. The government said we could do that, but we didn't realize we couldn't. Sorry." So what did that happen? Well, where's it? Think of some of the other stuff they have. They have, if they can't control you, they kill you. And then once they kill you with Project Mockingbird, they controlled the news media. They controlled the narrative that went out. And a lot of people still say that the Mockingbird is still going on, still used by the CIA today, which very well may be. We know that the JFK and RFK they lied, the CIA lied and buried evidence. Randy Weaver's wife and son, like I said, is in Idaho. They were killed by the FBI. National Guard opened up on fire on college students protesting the war. This was in 1970. Killed 4 dead, killed 4 and 9 wounded. And that was at Kent State. So this is how long it goes back. We're going all the way back to 1932. That was the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. That 1932. 100 years of this deep state, and we're complaining that Trump ain't getting it done fast enough. We have to take in consideration of how deep the roots go here. We're talking generations of people just hiring the same like-minded people. The corrupt hiring the corrupt. Um, you have, let's go back to 9/11, right? There was evidence that the U.S. intelligence agencies had forewarning of impending terrorist attack, but failed to act. Some allege it's intentionally and negligent for cover-ups, but Alex Jones in July of that year predicted that they were going to fly planes into the World Trade Center and blame a guy named Osama bin Laden. He did that in July of that year, months before it happened. The media knew about it because 17 minutes before, they were talking about Building 7. I think it was Building 7 that crashed. Later, the British news said it had already fell, and it was 17 minutes prior. You got the Bohemian Grove and the elite networks. It's a secretive Bohemian. If you don't know what Bohemian Grove is, it's a secretive retreat where political corporate elites gather to perform rituals and network out of the public eye. We're talking CEOs and presidents and governors, world leaders. And Alex Jones, that's another guy. Alex Jones exposed that. He snuck in and had all these world leaders catching him doing all that gay shit and sacrificing the uh, eh, fake dolls and stuff to Moloch, a giant freaking owl. You can see that on YouTube if they haven't taken it down. You know, the whole thing is a lot of this stuff has come true. A lot of this stuff hadn't been theories. It's fact. Conspiracy theory was actually made up by the CIA to discredit anybody that has any type of investigation or any kind of anybody questioning the methods. They're the ones that came up and coined the conspiracy theory. Like I said, we deal in conspiracy fact. Yeah, let's think of anything that in the recent history that has people say, "Oh, well, that's not true. That's not true." We talk about the vaccine. Said it's going to hurt people. True. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about how Anthony Fauci said that they tried to blame him for HIV, and then when he dug into it, and he found out that Anthony Fauci's over in the Congo giving HIV vaccines to natives that can't even speak English and anything was going on, and that's where they seem to think the HIV started from, right? That kind of fits his MO, right? That the HIV is actually probably a man-made disease. You don't get it from monkeys. What was that? He said some dude over there screwing monkeys. Remember, that was what they said, that some dude over there screwing monkeys and brought it back. Ain't nobody over there screwing monkeys. That's man-made. That's a man-made disease, just like COVID's man-made. I can attest for what COVID does. So there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about. There's a lot of stuff that 1933 actually it's called the business plot. And it was a group of wealthy businessmen that allegedly plotted to overthrow FDR and install a fascist government in the U.S. Grand Assembly. That should tell you, corporations was messing with the government then, just like they are now. That is absolutely the same thing 100 years ago. You have the Iran Contra. If you don't know what that is, Iran is the U.S. secretly brought arms to Iran, despite sanctions. Sold guns to Iran, our enemy. The same ones that we just bombed, the same guys that scream death to America every Friday down in their parliament, death to America, death to Israel. And they funneled the profits to the Contras in Nicaragua. They were rebels in Nicaragua because we were wanting to overthrow that government. And the Nicaraguan Contras, they ended up being drug dealers. Oliver North went to jail at that. Then he ended up getting a pardon. But he was doing what he was told. That was the 1980s. That was Ronnie Reagan, everybody's guy. Ronnie Reagan and George Bush. I have a theory on that too. George Bush Senior, he was a CIA operative. He was head of the CIA in the 70s, right? Till Jimmy Carter took over. Excuse me. Ronald Reagan didn't want George Bush as his running partner, but George Bush had some dirt on Ronnie or Ronnie's kid. I'm thinking it has to do with Ronnie's kid being a pedophile. And he's used that to get his way in and say, "Hey, I'm going to be your VP, like it or not." And Ron's like, "No, I don't want you to be my VP." And I said, "Well, this is what I have on you. Okay, you're my VP." He ended up funding. Think about it. You had a CIA director of CIA who later becomes VP, who later becomes president. He set up pedophile chains over into Europe and stuff, and into Hong Kong. He's the one that set up that pedophile stuff. The Omaha Boys School, that was during his time. All those boys that came out and said that Lawrence King guy was flying them in and out of Washington, D.C., taking them up into the Capitol and into the White House through tunnels underneath. And they said that the VP and them were molesting them. And that's you can find that. It's Nebraska Omaha Boys School. That's on YouTube, and it's a documentary that never got aired. Uh, yeah, we had touched on a lot of stuff. There's a lot of it you can look up, but there's a lot of stuff I didn't know of. I always heard that that Malcolm X was assassinated, but we didn't know it was the FBI. Martin Luther King assassinated, didn't know it was the FBI. Fred Hampton didn't even know about that. I knew the leader got killed, didn't know that was the FBI, New York PD. There was the bomb incident in Philadelphia in 1985. A lot of people might know this, a lot of you might not. But the Philadelphia PD dropped a bomb from a helicopter onto a house that was occupied by the Move. And the Move was a black activist group, kind of like the Black Panthers. It ended up killing 11 people, 5 of them were children, and burned 65 homes. Why in the world is the Philadelphia Police Department dropping a bomb from a helicopter? That's absolutely crazy to me that they would do that. How? They had some guy make up an IED and said, "Hey, I can make this. I can just drop it from the helicopter. They'll get them out of her. It's an incendiary device." Yeah. I told you I was going to make these a little bit shorter and stuff. It's food for thought. Listen, I want us to be aware of what we're dealing with. We're going back 100 years of corrupt government, corrupt politicians, corporations with their thumb on the scale of justice, and we are sucking eggs, trying to survive. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I think that y'all might think I'm crazy. Before 401k, everybody had pensions. I think corporations that got together said, "Hey, let's do away with pensions, and we'll tell these people we'll invest in 401k, and you'll make more money for your retirement." When actually you don't. You lose money. The stock market, pummels. Heaven forbid if you bought Cracker Barrel stock. You've lost your ass on this Cracker Barrel stock. It dropped $4 overnight because of DEI stuff. But I think that was corporations getting together and convincing politicians, "Hey, this is the best way to do it." Al Gore, oh my God, has made millions of dollars of peddling fake bullshit climate change stuff. First global warming, then global cooling. And then they say, "Well, I can't keep up with it, so let's make it climate change." When all evidence indicates that there's not really any climate change, that the weather is cyclical. And it ebbs and flows. It always has and always will. That's the science of it. But if you have millions of dollars to give to scientists, and you want these scientists to say a certain thing, these scientists are going to want that money for that research. They're going to tell you whatever you want to hear. That's human nature. You're throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at guys that all they want to do is their research and be left alone and be nerded out. So you're giving them funds to these nerds, and they're going to tell you what you want to hear. They don't have backbones. They don't have backbones. But they don't have conscience either. Anthony Fauci's one of them. Yeah, how many people? What's the death toll on him now with this COVID, with HIV? What's the death toll on him? You look at the two biggest diseases, man-made diseases, in the last 50 years, 30 years. Who's attached to it? Anthony Fauci with HIV and COVID-19. So that's something we could look into also. But we're going to try to keep it light. We're going to try to keep it, mixed up and stuff. I'll have some current events next time. Maybe not. It depends. Like I said, this is my therapy. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I know my wife and kids, they get tired of hearing it, but I do my research for the most part. I enjoy talking about it. Once again, thanks for joining. If you have any questions or something, leave a comment. If you have criticisms, that's fine too. I'm a big boy. I can listen to it. And maybe I'll take heed, maybe I won't. But we'll see. Appreciate your time. Have a good night.